Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for September the 22nd of 2020. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news you need to know from around the industry. Hosted on YouTube and podcast services around the world 5 days a week, it is your one-stop shop for everything you need to know. So if you enjoy the show and you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and keep coming back for more. But today was a very big day. We saw the pre-orders for the Xbox Series X and S open up, and things were not as chaotic as the PlayStation 5 pre-orders were last week, but they were still pretty insane. Unfortunately, many people that were wanting to pre-order a console were unable to. I happen to be one of those that did not get their hands on Microsoft's next-gen hardware. Personally, I was trying for the Xbox All Access program, and I think that took a little bit more time than normal, so I wasn't able to get my hands on one. But if you are in my camp and you don't have access to the new hardware at launch, or at least you don't have a pre-order on day one of pre-orders, you really have nothing to worry about, because Microsoft has assured people that more are coming, just as Sony has said more PlayStation 5s are coming. It will be fine, and as I've said all week, whether you're on Team Xbox or Team PlayStation, the launch window is still looking relatively desolate. So if you currently have an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, you have plenty to play this holiday season, enough to keep you busy for a very long time until these bad boys get back in stock. But with that being said, there is still more news to talk about today, and it still pertains to Xbox, which has been dominating the media landscape as of late. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella says it will continue to look to grow Xbox game studios. Bethesda sounds like it won't be the last purchase that Microsoft and Xbox game studios will be making as time moves forward. Microsoft announced that it would be spending a cool $7.5 billion to snatch up ZeniMax Media, and by proxy Bethesda Softworks, only yesterday. And despite the massive transaction being set to take place at the end of this fiscal period, it does not seem as though the megacorporation has closed its pocketbook just yet. In a new conversation with CNET, Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella spoke a bit about the Bethesda acquisition and what that means for the company in the future. Nadella said that he believes software will be vital for Microsoft moving forward. As such, even though Bethesda has been brought aboard and now grows Xbox game studios to 23 teams in total, Nadella does not seem to look at this as the final acquisition that Microsoft will ever make. Quote, "We'll always look for places where there is that commonality of purpose, mission, and culture," Nadella acknowledged while calling back to the history that Bethesda and Microsoft have had in the past. "We will always look to grow inorganically where it makes sense," end quote. The thought that Microsoft still is not done adding teams to its Xbox Game Studios banner is quite staggering, especially considering that it has already added 7 other studios and established one more since 2018. Still, considering how much the Microsoft brand is worth and how much capital the corporation had on hand at any given time, further acquisitions do not seem to be out of reach by any stretch of the imagination. This could be a massive move for Xbox, and it really already is. Now, if you want to hear more about my thoughts and the news on the Bethesda Softworks acquisition and the ZeniMax Media acquisition, of course, you can check out yesterday's show. We did a very in-depth dive on that subject. But as far as this news goes, more acquisitions could potentially be coming in the future. I think that shows that Microsoft is in it to win it. Because you see Sony replicating this in the past few years, and now Xbox is going to be taking up where Sony left off. You saw the acquisitions of course, people like Insomniac Games, a massive purchase for Sony that has resulted in some very, very big exclusives, and so now you see Microsoft playing that exact same game. And it makes sense. Now, Xbox is, if not one of the biggest publishers in the entire industry. The amount of games that this company is going to be putting out is absolutely insane, and there really is no loss, because it depends on how you look at it. If these games are created and they are exclusive to PC and Xbox, then Microsoft is able to keep all of these players in their space, and it adds to the value of the Xbox brand. But let's say they don't want to go that route, and they do release their titles on PlayStation 5, or maybe even things like Google Stadia perhaps, if that's something you are interested in, then they still get a cut of that revenue. There is still a deal being made there. Money is just exchanging hands no matter how you cut it, and so ultimately this is going to be nothing but profitable in the long run, especially with a big name acquisition like ZeniMax Media. But of course, Microsoft has acquired small studios in the past as well, so we'll see what their next big move is. But as for right now, I would say they're probably going to be on the back burner for a bit because $7.5 billion is nothing to shake a stick at. Again, that is a lot of money no matter who you are or what company you might be with. But speaking of buyouts, Sony was reportedly in talks to sign Starfield as a PlayStation 5 exclusive before Xbox bought Bethesda out. The Elder Scrolls publisher, which Microsoft has agreed to purchase in a $7.5 billion deal, had recently agreed other timed PlayStation 5 console exclusivity deals for new IP titles Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo. And according to journalist Imran Khan, talks have begun on signing Bethesda's sci-fi RPG Starfield as a PlayStation exclusive. Quote, "The timing on this announcement is absolutely fascinating," Khan wrote on Monday. The week after Sony solidifies their existing exclusivity with some Bethesda games, but the day before Xbox opens up pre-orders. He added, "Fun note, Sony had been negotiating timed exclusivity on Starfield as recently as a few months ago. Going to guess either those talks are done or the price suddenly went way up." Head of Xbox Phil Spencer said this week that he will honor PlayStation's timed exclusivity agreements for Deathloop and Ghostwire, but future Bethesda titles such as Starfield will be available for Xbox, PC, and Game Pass. "We'll take other consoles on a case-by-case basis," Spencer told Bloomberg. Game director Todd Howard provided a small update on Starfield following Monday's Xbox news, revealing that it will feature Bethesda's largest engine overhaul since Oblivion. Bethesda's creation engine has been used in its games since 2011's Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. It was then modified for subsequent titles including Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. Starfield was announced in June 2018 with a teaser trailer following which Howard said it was a game that he's wanted to make for a very long time. Nothing has been seen of the game since, and at last year's E3 show, the game's director asked fans to be very patient in regards to the next unveiling of Starfield. "I will say this, I like when you really see the game to when it's out to be as short as possible, as short as people will let me," he said. Howard was speaking in an interview with IGN in June 2019 in which he said Starfield broke Bethesda's development cycle of working on Elder Scrolls and Fallout. "We had done so many things. We were going Elder Scrolls, Fallout, and you have this Starfield game in your head and you sort of say when? It can be never, you could say never, but we're creatives and we have to make this game and this is the time. And so the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to have to wait a little bit, plus again, the Elder Scrolls Online is doing so well," end quote from 2019. So this is another massive story because this shows the competition. This perfectly highlights the importance of exclusivity deals when it comes to being a competitive player in the next generation space. Because Sony has money to throw around. They understand the importance of exclusivity. If you look at the deal that they have with Activision for games like Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, that is going to sell consoles because you do get access to some content earlier, assuming that contract is still saying the same as it did for Modern Warfare. Then on top of that, before they became independent, Bungie had to do a lot of exclusivity with Destiny. And so you saw that impact players' decisions to where when it comes to consoles, PlayStation was the place to play, and to a large degree, it remains the place to play when it comes to Destiny and Destiny 2. And so, if Starfield had been a PlayStation timed exclusive, or could you even imagine an exclusive itself, that would change the game again. And so Xbox has swooped in and said, no, that's not how this is going to go. They are on our team. Essentially, it's like everybody's picking at the beginning of a game of kickball or softball. That is exactly what's happening here, and it's important to have some good players on your team if you do want to win. Now, ultimately, of course, competition breeds innovation, and so hopefully Sony will turn around and be able to offer something more, because they're competing for you and me. That's exactly what they're doing. And so whatever gets you and me more interested, both of these parties are trying to do that at any cost necessary. So we'll see how this all shakes out, but it looks like Starfield will not be a PlayStation 5 timed exclusive, as it reportedly was shaping up to be. Now, speaking of next-gen consoles, we talked about this a couple of weeks back, but it looks like we now know just how much the Xbox Series X extra storage is going to cost. Ooh, it's going to be a little pricey. Users on Reset Era have found UK retailers listing the 1TB storage expansion being listed for €160. That is roughly, 160 pounds. The euro is the backwards E. Actually, no, it's just a regular. Regardless, 160 pounds, that is roughly $205 USD. But the price in the United States won't necessarily translate exactly. Of course, they will update the regional prices as they become available, but these drives are NVMe SSDs, which tend to be on the expensive side, so this is not a surprising price. The extra storage will effectively double the 1TB storage space of the Xbox Series X and triple the 512GB Xbox Series S. Notably, the S is an all-digital console, whereas the X has a disk drive, but file sizes for Series S games will also be significantly smaller due to the system not outputting at a 4K resolution. You will be able to play backwards compatible games from any external drive, and you can even store Series X and Series S games on them, but any Series X and S games that you want to play will need to be moved to a supported SSD. Hopefully you guys got that, but essentially the idea behind that last portion is that you can store games on an external drive, but they will more than likely have to be loaded onto either the expansion card or your internal SSD within the machine itself. So it looks like these prices are just about in line with what we saw a couple of weeks back. The speculations were accurate, and this is going to be one costly little piece of hardware. And again, it calls back to the PlayStation Vita memory sticks that we saw that just cost so much money because they were proprietary, and they still go for hundreds of dollars. And that's something that's very painful for a lot of people. And it also takes away from the value of the Xbox Series S, because if you don't want to have to continually uninstall and reinstall games, you will have to have some kind of external storage. That's just what it comes down to. And of course, the storage concerns are not limited to the Xbox consoles. On the PlayStation side of things, you already see Spider-Man Miles Morales and Demon Souls coming in and clocking in at roughly 112 gigabytes together, if I remember that number correctly, which is again a large portion of that 825 gigabyte hard drive within the PlayStation 5. And so you look and you see a lot of troubles coming with the storage for the next generation, and 1TB feels incredibly small. Because if 1TB feels small now on a PlayStation 4 Pro and an Xbox One X, I can't imagine how it's going to be as these games become more and more complex and they have higher textures, etc. It's going to be a very big problem if they don't get a handle on either the cost of storage or how the data is stored itself. But speaking of these massive games, Spider-Man Remastered will not work with PlayStation 4 Spidey saves, and it looks like there will be no free upgrade for existing owners either. Quote, "What will happen if I put my PS4 Spider-Man disc in my PS5? One fan asked via Twitter. Insomniac replies, you'll play PS4 game via backwards compatibility. PlayStation has not definitively ruled out some kind of last-minute offer or upgrade to existing owners on Spider-Man on PS4, but there has been no mention of it either. And of course, they have reached out to Sony at Eurogamer for comment. As a reminder, you can only get Spider-Man Remastered as part of the pricier Deluxe Edition version of the sequel Spider-Man Miles Morales, and this edition costs $70. While Miles Morales will also launch on PlayStation 4, the Deluxe Edition will not. And so while Miles Morales will be cross-gen, and you get the PS5 version of that if you own the PS4 version, you will have to get the Deluxe Edition version on PlayStation 5 to get Spider-Man Remastered. Are you with us so far? It's a little bit complex. Further indicating that Spider-Man and Spider-Man Remastered will be kept entirely separate, Insomniac confirmed the latter is its own game/icon with its own separate trophy list. Spider-Man Remastered will include the base game and its expansion content, as well as improved performance, visuals, and audio. The remaster for the PlayStation 5 is no simple up-res, as many of the game's art assets have been completely updated to take advantage of the PlayStation 5 console's horsepower. You will see better-looking characters with improved skin, eyes, hair, and facial animations, including our new next-generation Peter Parker, Insomniac previously described. You will also see ray-traced reflections and ambient shadows, improved lighting, more pedestrians, and vehicles stretching further into the distance, and the same optional performance mode offered on Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, allowing you to finally play the game at a targeted FPS frame rate. We will be supporting near instant loading, 3D audio, and the DualSense controller's haptic feedback. And lastly, we are adding 3 amazing new Spider-Man suits, new photo mode features, and even new trophies for those of you looking to platinum the game all over again. Miles Morales has been a source of some confusion ever since its announcement. There was a kerfuffle over whether it was a standalone expansion or a full new game, with one PlayStation exec calling it an expansion and enhancement. Then there was a surprise over the fact that it will actually arrive on PS4 as well, despite not initially being announced and despite Sony's talk of believing in generations. This news comes at an incredibly unfortunate time for the team at Sony because of how well Microsoft is actually doing. If you look at Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you see so much value being provided there. Not only do you get so many big games already included in Game Pass, you now have EA Play brought in, you have collaborations with Discord and DoorDash. On top of that, you now have Bethesda Game Studios joining the family, and all of those titles coming day and date to Game Pass. It's the ultimate value, and it really does set a benchmark for what you should offer to consumers, and unfortunately, Sony really can't afford to do that right now. And so, looking at Spider-Man Remastered, it's crazy to see that you don't even get a free upgrade. That's something that seems like a no-brainer for the main line of competition. On top of that, $70 for the deluxe edition seems like a very high price for a game that we've already played, even with some enhancements. But I have no doubt it's still going to be phenomenal. Spider-Man on PS4 was a great game, and Miles Morales looks wonderful. But it still just doesn't sit right. It feels very, very poorly handled, I suppose, for lack of a better phrase. But speaking of PlayStation exclusives, The Last of Us Part 2 has exciting things lined up for September the 26th, which is now The Last of Us Day, formerly known as Outbreak Day. In a tweet this morning, Naughty Dog promised to share a lot of exciting things for The Last of Us Part 2 on Sunday, September 26th. This community-centric date was formerly known as Outbreak Day, but going forward, the developer is swapping over to The Last of Us Day, branding in light of COVID-19. Are we going to see the multiplayer reveal on Saturday? I am feeling hopeful. As relayed in September 2019, the studio prioritized wrapping up the story. It came to the realization that the planned evolution of factions had grown beyond an additional mode that could be included with our enormous single-player campaign. At the time, Naughty Dog said that players would eventually experience the fruits of our team's online ambition, but not as part of The Last of Us Part 2. In August 2020, a rough but unmistakable clip showed leaked multiplayer footage. There was a ton of unknowns about factions, when, where, and how much, but I liked the movement and gunplay enough in Part 2 to want to face off against other players, and The Last of Us Day seems like the right place to lift the lid. Weaving through the grass, getting the jump on someone, I'm in. Factions was terrifying and thrilling in The Last of Us, and that's what I'm hoping for again. Now personally, here's my hypothesis. I have absolutely no foundation to base these claims off of. But this would be a very important launch game. If you were able to successfully bring The Last of Us Part 2's factions out to the PlayStation 5 at launch alongside the PlayStation 4 version of the game as well, that would give people more of a reason to pick up the console. On top of that, if you did want to go very ballsy, you could actually make it a PlayStation 5 exclusive. And that would be unprecedented, but it would be something that unmistakably provided more value at the beginning of a generation when there is no reason to buy a PlayStation 5 unless you are really, really, really into Demon's Souls. And so I think that's probably what we are going to see. But of course, if you are a fan of The Last of Us, you should be looking forward to this weekend because there is always going to be some big news coming out of the big Last of Us Day. I want to call it Outbreak Day. Going to take some time to undo that one. But to round out today's show, a bit of a sad laugh, if you will. It sure looks like people are buying Xbox One X by mistake. Yikes. Microsoft's announcement that its next generation would be called Xbox Series X and Series S got some amount of ribbing. What if people confuse it with the current gen Xbox One X and S? Now, as the console pre-orders go live, there is at least some indication that the naming scheme is leading to mistaken purchases. According to Amazon's Movers and Shakers chart in the video games category, Xbox One X sales are up 431% at the time of writing. I have seen as high as 700%. These kinds of percentage-based charts can be misleading, but that kind of sudden surge at least suggests that some consumers may be buying the system by mistake, intending to pre-order the next generation console. This is speculation, however, so we can't make definitive conclusions. There is no similar surge for the Xbox One S on the charts, but if product confusion were at the issue, it seems that may be happening too, as consumers mistake the Xbox One S for the similar Xbox Series X and S. Microsoft, for its part, is trying to simplify the whole idea of generations by emphasizing its consoles as simply Xbox, with the different series acting as a model name like a phone. That also appears to be a big reason for its smart delivery push to simplify the end-user experience without a lot of footsing over different console configurations. Meanwhile, the pre-orders for the Xbox Series X and S received better messaging than the PlayStation 5, but the situation was still a mess. So, this highlights that there is a potential issue with the nomenclature, but that's mainly because people aren't used to seeing this in the gaming space. If you look to the phone space, people are used to seeing these iterations. People are used to seeing this kind of name. But normally, you see things like PlayStation 4, 5, 3, 2. You know what these are. They are sequential. In the Xbox world, they're trying something a bit different. The Xbox, then the Xbox 360. Then the Xbox One. Now you have the Xbox Series X. It becomes a bit confusing if you don't pay attention to the overall language that is being used within the gaming industry itself. And so I think that's where the confusion is coming from. But I think that one big element here is the chaos. Because whenever you see Wario64 tweet out that the Xbox Series X or S is live on Amazon, you want to go get it immediately. You want to jump on that. You want to be able to get that in your cart as soon as possible and click checkout, regardless of whether or not you even read the description or the title itself. And so if you just go on Amazon and search Xbox Series X, one of the first things that comes up if you don't have a Series X in stock is the Xbox One X. And if you see it's in stock, you automatically make an assumption. So this is a combination of a bit of a confusing nomenclature, and on top of that, people trying to check out as quickly as possible. So ultimately, this is going to be a bit of a mess. But I don't think it's as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be. But this kind of confusion was absolutely inevitable. So we'll see how it shakes out. But it is worth mentioning, in the title for the Xbox One X, at the end of its title, it says discontinued. Read before you buy. Just do that for me. Read before you buy. This is a lot of money we're talking about. Don't waste your money on an Xbox One X. But with that being said, that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed today's show, drop me a like down below and let me know if you got your hands on an Xbox Series X and S, a PlayStation 5, or a 3080. I would love to hear how your luck is going right now. But until next time, you guys have a fantastic rest of your night. I'll talk to you soon, and peace.